Hi everyone, welcome to Imbibliophile. Can I start again? Hello everyone, welcome to Imbibliophile, the only video out there featuring me, KJ Holiday, spinning fables and flipping tables, or for people who don't like rhyme or things that make sense, I will be getting incredibly drunk and trying to review a book. This week is our first week. It's also St. Patrick's Day, so forgive the festivities. I am going to be tackling The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. But in order to do that, I have to go get drunk. So, I'll be right back. Love you. Hey. I feel like I fucked up. This is probably the worst book to try an intro on a book review. Let me tell you something. This book was a fucking mess. And I'm just gonna preface this whole review with, I liked the book. I really enjoyed it. I really like Erin Morgenstern a lot. I really enjoyed the book. But this is, I want you to do me a favor right now, and that is to lower your expectations of a lot of things. Like I said before, I love Erin Morgenstern. The Starless Sea is her second book. Her very first book was The Night Circus. If you've read The Night Circus at all, you know it is the shit. I just reread it not very long ago, just like I just read this at a book club as well, and it holds up. Like it's fantastic. So when I was like, oh, Erin Morgenstern is releasing a second book, we're gonna read it in a book club, I was like, fuck yeah, that sounds great, because I love Erin Morgenstern. I'm taking off my socks. My feet are really hot. Is this a problem only I have? It might be. So yeah, I was really excited about it, and I still am excited about it even right now. And let me just talk about, and if you look at the Starless Sea cover, you'll see like a whole bunch of swoops on it, and it's very gold, and there's a pirate ship in the corner and key, and you're like, this fucking book is about pirates, and I'm okay with that. Like, the minute you look at the cover, you're like, this whole thing is gonna be a pirate adventure, and I'm down. Like, I'm down for that. It is not. It's a spoiler. I should have prefaced that with a spoiler. But I really hope that if you're watching this, you're not going to be mad that I'm going to spoil some stuff, because this is us, fam. This is why we're here. There are no pirate. Well, I mean, there's one pirate, but he's there for like 20 seconds. I don't know if you can see this board either. The Starless Sea is basically about a place which is an underground world known as a harbor on the Starless Sea. The harbor on the Starless Sea, you'll hear that many times throughout the book. And it serves as like a sanctuary for stories and storytellers. So it's almost like a labyrinth where people can go in and out, and there's different doors, and there's people who paint doors, and you can go through the sea, you can go to the sea, you can go into this crazy like library, university area. And the Starless Sea is like houses for stories and storytellers, but you have to be chosen in order to know how to like get there and be there and like be in the know. Like if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you don't know. You dig. And another thing to understand about the Starless Sea is it's not just one linear story. It is five-ish 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 5-ish stories, all kind of like, if it were, so this like, it's like weaving together, right? So it's like 5 stories that seem like they don't make any goddamn sense sometimes. And they're all weaving together into one cohesive story. And it's really hard to explain, and that's why I'm like, why did I choose this book out of all of the books that I could have chose that are like at least, you know, one thing. So we're gonna start off like with the way that the book starts off, which the book starts off with some pretty specific elements. And the book starts off with a story, and it is a story about fate and time. Basically, fate falls in love with time, And it becomes detrimental to the way that the world runs, because obviously time wants to not act as time because it wants to be with fate, and fate doesn't want to decide people's fates because it wants to be with time. And the Owl King decides, we can't have this shit. First of all, nobody's getting laid in this bitch unless I'm getting laid. No, that's not how this works. So he's like, no, this isn't gonna happen. So he gets like this congregation of like crazy bees and mermaids and pirates and fucking everybody in this whore is like, no, fate and time, you can't be together. So the Owl King decides, you know what? I'm gonna kill fate. I'm gonna kill her. Fuck her. It's fine. It's totally fine. But so he goes to like be like, you know what? I'm gonna murder fate. It's fine. But what he doesn't know is that he can't murder fate because some mouse snuck in and stole Fate's heart and then like went and hid it. And by hid it, he like approaches this storyteller and he's like, hey, I got this heart. Can you help a brother out? I'm a mouse. And that's how that's like, and the story, like that portion of the story is very, very short, but it repeats throughout the entire book because that's how important it is. That's like, it keeps reminding you of that. And so it's a short little like synopsis, but like, you know, immediately that that's going to be important. The second thing that they like bring you to in the book is the story of this pirate and a mermaid. So that there's this pirate and you're like, pirates! Ah, yes, this is what I came for. Okay, you get the pirate, he's in a cage, and you're like, all right, dope, sweet. And there is this mermaid. I don't know if she's also known as an acolyte, but she's definitely a mermaid. She can't speak, and her and this pirate are like doing this thing, but like through the bars where they're vibing on each other really hard, and you know, and the pirate is like definitely in love with her, and somehow he like the mermaid sets him free. And then that kind of just ends. And when those two stories end, which are very short snippet stories to kind of introduce everything, you're like, okay, what's happening? It starts with kind of like the main story. And this is the main storyline that's kind of going to carry everything through. And all the other stories are just going to kind of weave into it. So basically, this story is about, it introduces to this gentleman named Zachary Ezra Rollins. Now, if you were an idiot like I was and read the audiobook, you know how awful the casting for that audiobook is. I just need to go to whoever published The Starless Sea or call Erin Morgenstern, because apparently I have the ability to do that, and be like, what did you do? I could probably digress for 20 minutes about how awful this narrator is and how unfit he is for this character. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna keep going into what hold on. Oh God. All right, I'm fine. So basically, it opens up into this story where it's this young kid, his name is Zachary Ezra Rollins. It talks about his mom a little bit. His mom is a fortune teller. They're from New Orleans originally. And he's just like, he's one of those people who like, he's never fit in. He doesn't really have a lot of friends. He has this friend named Kat who like he hangs out with sometimes, and she knits him fucking scarves. But mostly like when he's at home, he's at home with books. So he's basically like all of us. He literally self-describes himself as like a loner with a bit of a drinking problem. And so basically this book is about me. He's in a library and he stumbles across this book. It's called Sweet Sorrows. And he's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. It doesn't have any of the like the library stuff in it. I wonder where it came from. And he opens it up, and the freaking like the very first words in this book is the son of the fortune teller. And then it proceeds to talk about a time when he was very young where he stumbled across a door. And it was kind of like a distant memory to him, but like the second he's reading it, he's like, this fucking book is telling about something that happened to me. What the fuck is going on? So he takes the book from the library. I don't know if he checks it out. No, I think he does check it out. Or he kind of like tries to check it out, but they're like, we don't know where this book came from. It's a mystery. Magic. And he's like, sounds sus. I'm going to take this book anyway. So he takes this book and he just becomes obsessed with it. Like, he goes about his normal life. He goes and hangs out with his friend Kat and like some knitting, like some sort of adventure. They drink alcohol. But basically his entire like life shifts to this one moment, because it's like the only moment he feels like in his whole life that he's ever felt important, because he's like, this book is about me and I want to know why. Why is this book about me? There is no publishing credits. There are no barcodes, and like nothing to track this bitch down. But he's like, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna fucking figure it out. So he goes to this library chick. Don't remember anything about her other than she's a library chick and she was like into mysteries and stuff with him. And she helps him figure out that it came from some fancy collection with a whole bunch of other books, but it was part of a fancy collection, and it should have had all of the tags and like livery and junk on it, but it didn't, and that makes her real sus too. But he was like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. So he is just like obsessed with this book, and he just keeps like diving into it constantly, like to the point where he has like notes, he's like dissected, he's being crazy and doing this shit, like right now what I'm doing, like this is him exactly at this moment in the book. We're here, we've made it, congratulations. He's doing all these things, and so he starts like Googling important themes in this book. And the important themes are this, because these book, the Sweet Sorrows, as well as the Starless Sea, Sweet Sorrows, the book inside the book, have 4 elements that just do not stop repeating. And when I say do not stop repeating, they like repeat, I think it was something upwards of like fucking 2,500 times in the book. And that is the bee, the key, the sword, and the door. And so he's just Googling this shit, because like that's what you do, because it's the 21st century, is you just Google stuff. And he's like, I gotta figure this out. So he stumbles upon this like storyteller, crazy New Yorkian party with this girl, and like somebody was like, I want to find this necklace because it's like so cute, and this girl is like turned to the side and you can't really make it out, but she's got like a bee, a key, and a sword like necklace on, and she's like getting like in this face by some guy in the picture, and like Zachary for some reason is like, this is important. The fact that all these things are together is important, and there's something about this chick and this party. There's something, I have to go to this party. And he's like, all right, Kat, my homegirl who knits me Ravenclaw scars, you gotta hook a sister up. You gotta get me a mask. So he gets a mask and he decides to go. I have to go to this party. So he's being super suspicious. He's just like, I have to go out of town with a mask to do something vague. And everyone's like, okay, yeah, you're fine. Go ahead, Zachary, you're fine. It's cool. So he goes out of town and he's dressed up as like the Man in Black. I feel like he's dressed up like the Man in Black from The Princess Bride, and if he's not, somebody can just comment on this and tell me that he's not, because I don't fucking remember, but I feel like he's wearing all black, he's feeling fucking debonair, like, I mean, he's like, look at you, yeah, yeah, like, he's just feeling himself, and he feels like for the first time in his life, when he's going to this party, that he is finally, like, the main character in his story. So he is determined that something's going to happen at this party. So he meets this bitch in a polar bear like fucking dress. She's wearing a polar bear coat, or a coat that reminds him of a polar bear. All it made me think of when I heard this description is this bitch is Cruella de Vil. Immediately I'm like, this is gonna be the villain. And spoiler alert, I was right. Shh. So he meets this chick, she's a polar bear, whatever. He turns around another time and he knocks into this chick who's dressed like Max from Where the Wild Things Are. And he's like, I love that. Like he would literally do what every person would ever fucking do in that scenario, is go, hey, I loved that fucking book as a kid. You were chill. We're gonna hang out. It's cool. So they dance and it's cool. Everything's fine. He's got Sweet Sorrows on him. He's doing good. And then Max is like, I gotta dip. See you later. Does that make sense? I don't know. So anyway, moving on. So Max dips, and he, for some reason, he's like, I don't know if he's like, I gotta go, or I gotta go find Max. Cause he was like, I know Max is the bitch in the picture with the, like the things, like the necklace, right? He's like, I know, I gotta ask her what the hell this book is. I want to know what's happening. So like he like goes into, I feel like he gets lured into this dark passageway. Oh no, he gets pickpocketed. Right? I think he gets this is really bad. I should have done better. I'm so sorry. He gets pickpocketed, and he's like, this motherfucker, and he's like, he can't fight because he's like a fragile petal. 99.9% of this book. He gets pickpocketed, and some guy is like, follow me into the dark, sweet child of mine. And so he's like, all right. So he like follows this guy, and they're in this dark room. And this guy starts telling him the story of Fate and Time, which is also in Sweet Sorrows. So, one, it's sus that this guy is just like telling him a story that's in Sweet Sorrows, right? He's like, no, I've heard this story, bro. I know what you're telling me right now. This isn't new. But like, he's putting out vibes. He's putting out like hella vibes. So, well, I have my little notes here. So while we're doing this, here. If you haven't told, first of all, the son of the fortune teller is Zachary Ezra Rollins. And I should just delete all this because we know all these things. Your main story is this one, and it's the middle story, and I'm going to put them right there. And then I'm just going to draw like a straight line. So Zachary Ezra Rollins is the main story. He meets somebody in the darkness who's circling him, putting out the vibe, and Zachary Ezra Rollins is like, yeah, I'm into this. Yeah, I mean, yeah. He's like, I've had a few drinks, but like, what are we doing after this? Like, are we gonna go, or like your hotel or mine? Cause yeah. So basically that's where it goes. And then all of a sudden he's telling the story of Fate and Time, which is important. And Brad disappears. Zachary's like fumbles his way out of the dark, and he's like, where the hell did this guy go? But he finds a slip of paper in his pocket saying, hey brah, meet me at this Bliss of Bliss and bring a flower. And so, you know, obviously like Zach is picking up on the vibe. So he's like, okay, maybe this is flirting, or maybe this is danger, because I don't know what the fuck I'm in anymore. And I feel like at this point in the story, let me just say, they start introducing the story of Simon and Eleanor. So it talks about Simon and Eleanor, which is this guy, Simon, inherits an estate from his long lost mother, who wasn't like a fucking anything. And he's like, all right, cool. I got actual land now, and I can leave my abusive situation. He's basically Cinderella, but like he actually got bequeathed something that's worth something. So he's like, chill, I'm gonna go to this house, and it's like, it's a piece of shit, but like it's mine now, and they can't tell me what to do anymore. And in that house, he finds a door. Inside of the door, it goes to the Starless Sea, which is like the harbor under the sea, which is like a big maze mansion crazy thing. And under there, he meets a girl named Eleanor. And it's just like, it's a chance meeting, and they quip and bounce about, and she leaves the room and then disappears. She never comes back, and he tries to find her and he never finds her. And so he goes back to his life, and back in the whatever, in the other world, and he's like, oh cool, maybe that happened, or maybe that didn't happen. So that storyline also starts kind of around this exact same time. My sticky notes do not want to stay on my board. I feel like this is important. I have to get out fucking washi tape for this situation, so you're welcome. Where was I? I don't want that on my head anymore. Okay. Everything's gonna be fine. It starts with this, it starts like weaving in the story of Simon and Eleanor, and it also starts weaving in the story of a girl, a very, very young girl, who like found this door, and it was in the ground, and she's like, this is a fucking handle. I should yank on it. So she yanks it up, and it's a hole, and she falls into it, and it's basically Alice in Wonderland up in this bitch. while those stories start and they're starting to weave in, they're kind of starting to be like, they're like not quite to the main storyline, but they're all kind of like being mentioned, right? So they're all like, hey, we're all going down. Zachary's like, I got this paper flower of book prints because I don't have anything else to steal. And I don't know if he got mugged too with his wallet. I feel like he might have. And I feel like he just didn't have the time to like, I have to go to a fucking florist because I want to bang this guy who is like talking to me in the dark. So he's like, I'm going to steal this paper flower. And then he goes out into the snow. It's snowy as fuck because it's like January in New York and it's snowing. And he's like, I am colder than Dick. What am I doing this for? Is getting laid worth this? Which is, I feel like, the 955,000th% most valid question in 2021. He meets the guy who apparently was the one circling him in the dark, right? And, you know, guys, it's pretty fucking attractive. He introduces himself as Dorian. Now, Dorian doesn't give a lot away. He's mysterious, he's older, like he's pretty good looking, like he's putting out the vibe. But he tells Zachary that he needs Zachary's help in getting his book back. So like Zachary obviously has a book written about him and that's what led him here. But Dorian alludes to the fact that he needs Ezra's help, Ezra, to break into some crazy facility that he later tells Zachary is actually run by the lady who's the polar bear, who is Allegra. Polar bear lady. Polar bear lady has been identified. Their whole goal is to hoard books. Like, they're evil book people. Like, it's like reverse Fahrenheit 451 up in this bitch. And I feel like my buzz is wearing out. If Zachary doesn't do this, Dorian's not going to give him Sweet Sorrows back. Now, let's, like, be real. Sweet Sorrows is basically, like, the first friend that Zachary's ever had because it's, like, his whole life, right? So it's, like, somebody who actually knows him, who's watched him, and he's like, I have to get this book back. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this crazy espionage that he's like, however, let me just be very real. I have zero game. He puts it out there, and Dorian's like, oh, you got game. And then they do flirty things again, right? It's good. It's hot. It's hot. So we fast forward. Zachary goes to this place and he's like, oh, hey, I've got this sword medallion and I gotta get a book. I gotta deposit this book I have in my hand. The guard lady at the front of this, like this thing that is run by Allegra, who isn't Allegra. It's like, it's some other chick that he kind of knows. This chick was also watching him from a long time because they knew that he was like a potential to be a storyline person, and this whole community that they're trying to steal a book from wants to stop anyone from being able to access the Starless Sea. They don't want anyone down there. They don't want anyone in there. They don't want anyone around it. They just want to hoard it. They want a dragon. They want to be like crazy dragons for the Starless Sea. He's talking to this chick and he's like, oh yeah, I'm just such a good actor. And so he actually gets to the place that he needs to go. And Dorian like provides like a ding dong, and like it's a, oh, I have to go. Sorry, I have to go meet this other person. Because apparently like answering the door in a timely manner is more important than getting fucking robbed. They do that, and then sorry, I need a second. I'm so not even really far in this book, and I've been doing this for 28 minutes. Zachary steals a book, and then he's like, okay, I gotta dip. But in trying to dip, he runs into Allegra, who's like, look, fam, we're gonna talk. And he's like, I gotta go. There's like like, it's not even like a big, like, altercation. It's just like a, let's throw passive-aggressive comments at each other and run because you're wearing a heavy coat and I'm faster than you. So he runs out. I feel like he runs into Dorian and they're like, we gotta go, son. And I feel, and honestly, like, I could be mistelling this at this point, because I feel like Dorian's the one who led him to a door that was freshly painted in the Central Park somehow, and was like, bruh, get through it. I'll make sure nobody comes through it. You gotta go. You gotta go in there. And Zachary goes through the door, it closes behind him, and then he's like, he's in this fucking underground chamber, and he's like, I have no idea what's happening. He goes into an elevator, he drinks some wine and gets hammer drunk, which he doesn't understand, but he's about. Yo! And then he rolls some dice, which also presents some sort of like significant meaning, but it never actually describes what those meanings are. And then he's like just wandering around like, what the fuck am I? How do I get out of here? I'm in this underground ring. I've got this book, whatever. And so like he runs into this guy who is the innkeeper. The innkeeper who might have fallen on the floor. Innkeeper, where are you? I miss you. So we also have Mirabelle and Max. And I feel like Mirabelle and Max can go right here right now. Because we've met Mirabelle and Max, right? And so we've met the innkeeper as well. We run into the innkeeper. And the innkeeper just kind of lives underground in the harbor of the Starless Sea. And he just kind of records shit. He's just like, I just chill here all the time. And I fucking hang out with books. And I got long ass hair, and I'm fucking dope. And Zachary Ezra Rollins like, so what do I do? And he's like, well, obviously, like, you got down here, and I'm guessing you're allowed to be down here, so you can just chill. You just chill down here. It's fine. It's totally fine. And he's like, let me assign you a room. So he assigns him a room, and Zachary Ezra Rollins goes to his room, and he's like, okay. And that's kind of like when he's told that the kitchen will just like answer all of his prayers. So he just like asks the kitchen all of these things. He's like, hey, kitchen, get me new clothes. And they're like, gotcha, Zachary Ezra Rollins. He's like, hey, kitchen, I want fucking eggs Benny like delivered on the stat. And they're like, we love you, Zachary Ezra Rollins. While we're doing that in the linear timeline, we get to a point where fate and time coincides. And this is where it starts, like, actually the story kind of starts doing the thing where it weaves together. The story of Fate and Time kind of morphs into a story about the moon and the innkeeper. A girl, silver, beautiful girl, who shows up, and god damn it, I'm pretty sure it's the moon. It's either the moon or the sun. I'm pretty sure it's the fucking moon. This moon shows up to this inn, and she's like, bruh, look, I know it's weird, but I gotta, like, talk to somebody. I don't know when they're going to show up, but it's going to be soon. So can, like, you hook a sister up? And the innkeeper's like, yeah, sure. Cool. It's fine for a really long time. And it actually ends up being like a few days where it's just kind of like the moon and the innkeeper, right? And it's like, there's vibes flying. And then one day, this beautiful woman shows up who's like drenched in gold. It's the fucking sun. It was the moon. Sorry. Clarity, alcohol, not the best. The moon and the sun sit by the fire and they talk for a little while and then it goes away. The sun goes away, excuse me. And the moon is just chilling there and the innkeeper kind of comes up and he's just like, so, you want to stay forever? And the moon's like, I can't. I literally can't because of, I'm the moon. And that's just not how this works. But before I go, we're gonna bang. So they do bang. And that's kind of where the innkeeper, which is the innkeeper, kind of starts to make a little more sense. Because you're like, we've been introduced to an innkeeper before. And he's underneath the Starless Sea. So you start to be like, oh, this story has intersected a little bit. Because the story of the moon and the innkeeper is kind of also an allusion to the story of Fate and Time, where they meet and they're not supposed to be together. So we know that the innkeeper is either Fate or Time at this point. So we can move them up. At the same time, Simon and Eleanor have been meeting up randomly. And it gets to the point where they want to meet each other because they're vibing very, very hard at this point. And they're like, yes, I really like you. And then so they'll meet up and then it'll be like, one of them will walk out of the room to go get something or something of that nature. And I think that the last time before all of the big stuff happens is Eleanor walks out of the room to get Sweet Sorrows, which is her favorite book of all time that she found in the Starless Sea, to give to Simon because that's how much she loved it. And that's kind of how much she loves him. And she wanted to share something that she loved with him. And so she walks down out of the room and doesn't come back. And Simon kind of goes to the innkeeper and he's like, bruh, can you help me? I'm looking for Eleanor. I need to know where she is. Like, we have a situation. And this is when the innkeeper says, well, she hasn't been here yet. And that's when it plants the seed that the doors and the Starless Sea underneath it is not subject to time specifically. So you can enter this Starless Sea multiple points through multiple doors, and it'll always be at a different time. So the timelines aren't synchronous. Aren't synchronized. The timelines aren't synchronized. So they basically have to, it's basically a game of fate, right? Luckily he does meet up with her again. And the second he walks into the room, because there is a room that's kind of designated as their room that they always meet in, he sees her and he's like, I'm not gonna fuck around. Nope. And he's just immediately like throws lips on her, and they fall into beautiful, lovely merriment, and then obviously have sex, because I mean, fade to black, Erin Morgenstern, but I'm here for gratuitous sex, and I did not get that, so just gonna put that out there. So Simon and Eleanor, at this time, are banging. Very important. Eleanor was the one who introduced Sweet Sorrows, who gave it to Simon, who brought it to the mortal world up above, where eventually the son of the fortune teller, Zacharias Rollins, it falls into his hand, because obviously it has his story inside of it. All right, so Zacharias Rollins is down with the innkeeper. He's talking to the kitchen. He's ambling from different rooms trying to get out more information. And at some point he comes across Mirabelle Max, who is the chick who is dressed as Where the Wild Things Are, right? And he was like, oh my God, you have to tell me everything. And at some point during these discussions, so they've been hinting at the innkeeper, right? So at some point during these discussions where he's talking to Max, and Max is evasive, everybody talks in circles. If you're a storyteller down in the goddamn Starless Sea, you best believe you're just throwing riddles out like it's goddamn candy. Like, there's no, like, it's just like, let's make it difficult. I have no fucking clue. Zachary's ambling around from room to room, which you think is kind of like you don't know why this is happening. And this is the thing that I felt I didn't understand until book club, because I was like, he's just fucking walking around doing nothing. But he's actually walking around to all of the rooms that have been mentioned when it comes to Fate and Time and Simon and Eleanor. And that kind of weaves in a little bit later. and so it's not necessarily for nothing, but it is kind of like a fucking dead spot in the story where you're like, what's going on? Anyway, so he's walking around fucking doing his shit. And he walks in and sees, after him and Mirabelle have been like, we need to figure out what's going on. Where's Dorian? He's hot. I kind of would bang, like, what are we doing here? She starts to tell him that Allegra, Miss Polar Bear Lady, wants to overthrow the whole government. She wants to make sure, like, nobody in the entire world gets to go through a door. She wants to eradicate all painters. And so Mirabelle is a painter. Mirabelle Max is a painter. So she's kind of the person who painted doors. And she's the person who painted the door that Zachary almost went through as a kid in New Orleans. That Allegra, who is like the big bad lady. And here's the thing that I feel about Allegra, because Allegra was the villain of the story. I feel like I covered that when I called her Cruella. She is the villain of the story, and you never see her really be a villain. It just kind of alludes to her being a villain. Like, she fucking did everybody in this book dirty, but you don't get to see her do a single person dirty. Did she do somebody dirty? Like, I want to see this bitch, like, come collect. These are her books, and she thinks that these are books. I want her to come with, like, a flying sword and stab somebody through the heart. And I said that. We'll come back to that. Mirabelle then, however, tells Zachary that Allegra is the one who helped her paint the doors, I think. Please keep in mind, on all of these things, this is my understanding. If I fuck it up, please tell me. I'm sorry. I'm drunk. Allegra is the girl who made her paint, or who taught her how to paint the doors. With the other story about the girl who fell down the rabbit hole, who begins to literally form all of the harbors and the towns and the peoples inside of the Starless Sea. So she starts to build it. So it kind of gives the representation that Allegra, who is the big bad villain, formed the Starless Sea into this place where this is her entire identity, because she fell through the hole as a kid, right? So if she fell through the hole as a kid, she doesn't know anything else. And anything that anybody does, because there are prophecies and stories, right? And some of those stories allude to the Starless Sea kind of ending. There's like a cessation of everything that's happening. And Allegra obviously doesn't want that, because it's her entire identity. So she forms this fucking committee who's like, we're not gonna no, that's not happening. Not today. I'll dress like a polar bear and fucking wreck everybody who comes within 30 meters of this place. And casualties of that end up being Dorian, who goes to get his book back, right? And then recruits Zachary. And that's kind of how we get the girl who fell down the rabbit hole to intersect with the main story. While Mirabelle is revealing all these things to Zachary and like what seems like endless conversations that make no sense while he's wandering around rooms and just talking to the kitchen and just doing shit, he kind of stumbles like across a scene where the innkeeper and Mirabelle are intimate, and it's not like sex. Like the innkeeper, I keep smashing my elbow on this desk. The innkeeper kisses Mirabelle's shoulder, but that moment, because we know that the innkeeper is time, we know that Mirabelle is actually fate. So the story of fate and time is really the story of the innkeeper and Mirabelle. Zachary gets a minute to actually talk about all of this to the innkeeper. He's like, hey, well, what kind of was that? And the innkeeper's like, she dies a lot. That's when you kind of get the story where, yes, the Owl King, the original story where fate and time fell in love, and the Owl King was like, this isn't happening. The Owl King kind of like made it cursed that they would never be together, right? So they could be together for like fleeting moments somewhere in the course of history, and then she would always die. But he is time, and he lives in the harbor of the Starless Sea, and he just sits there waiting for her. He's documenting all of the things that happen in his life and time and whatever, and all of the versions of her that he gets, and it's like linear for him because he is time, but time just like is not linear to him. So it's like he's just writing like endless love letters to her underneath the Starless Sea, and I think that that's really precious. So we get that fate and time as the innkeeper and Mirabelle. And they're also the innkeeper and the moon. So have these things here. And right at this time, so obviously that would take the fate and time story kind of into an intersection with this, because Mirabelle is obviously very active in the current storyline. At the exact same time, I feel like that's when they reveal that Eleanor gets pregnant from her night with Simon when, they vibed a little too hard. So she gets pregnant. It also literally says that they never see each other again after that night. They fuck. And she gets pregnant and she never sees this motherfucker again. And so she gives birth to a baby, and she obviously lives in the harbor under the Starless Sea. She never goes topside. So she's down there with this newborn baby, and she asks the kitchen, and she says, what should I name the baby? And you want to know what the kitchen says? You should name her Mirabelle. Eleanor is the mother of Fate. And obviously because Fate can like regenerate or gets reborn a lot, that insertion is important, I think. Fuck, I don't know. Something happens to drive them out from underground. The Starless Sea is starting to collapse. So rooms are fucking collapsing, and things are cracking, and things are dissolving, and they're all running around, right? And Zachary is convinced he's got to find Dorian before it all ends. I literally don't know what the plot is at this point. It gets very obvious that Mirabelle wants the whole story to end. And in order to do that, she needs Zachary's help, but it's still kind of unclear what that help entails. At some point, and I really don't remember how this happens, there is an altercation between Dorian and Allegra because they have bad blood. And this is where I say, like, everything that Allegra does that is bad is off camera. Because like they fucking hate each other. Like they're enemies, but you don't know why really. She wronged him. He was part of the order to protect books and realized that it's bad. But like it doesn't really give you like a dossier of what the fuck this place is doing. Is this like ISIS bad, or is this like Scientology bad? They're both bad, but like one of them is socially acceptable. So God, I feel like that's gonna make people hate me. When Zachary sees Dorian fall down the pit with Allegra, he's like, my life is over, because guess what? I'm fucking obsessed in love with this man, and I will go to the ends of the earth to find him. You want to know why? Because this is my story. And this is where it kind of gets to that turning point in his character where he's like, no, this has always been my story. And I might have felt like an outcast my entire life growing up and that I didn't belong, but this belongs to me. And I'm gonna take my eraser and I'm gonna throw it on the ground and I'm gonna be like, this is what's up, game over. Dorian murders Allegra by running or falling through the hole. She dies, he doesn't die. I don't know how that works. He falls into the Starless Sea, all the way down into the actual Starless Sea, and finds out that it's honey. It's not water, it's honey. And that comes down to the original weird bee time key sword door thing where oh, okay, motherfucker's drowning in honey right now. He's like, okay, so I guess this is how he dies, but Allegra dies, but he doesn't die because he gets saved by Eleanor, who's just a pirate captain at this point. She's not a pirate captain. She just has a ship, and she's just soaring around in this sea of honey, and pulls her on board. And he's like, "Oh, hello, Dorian, little child of mine, darling. What's going on?" And Dorian's like, "Oh, I've read your story, Eleanor." And then he pulls out Sweet Sorrows because he still had it the whole time, because they actually never, Dorian and Ezra, from the first night when they were circling each other, being they never actually vibe again to talk, to be here's the Starless Sea, or here's Sweet Sorrows, excuse me. And Eleanor just because that was the book that she gave Simon, and she'd never seen Simon again, she was like, I never thought I would see this again. And it's a very sweet moment. Dorian's like, I'm gonna fucking figure out how to find this. I'm gonna fucking figure out how to get back to Zachary. I love Zachary. I'm obsessed with him. I've been obsessed with him from day one, because apparently Allegra, the girl who fell down, ooh, I just smeared that. The girl who fell down the rabbit hole had assigned Dorian to watch Zachary because she knew that Zachary was a threat to the underworld to end, because the plot that Mirabelle, who is fate and time, had hatched to end the story. And if she ends the story, it ends the Starless Sea, and that kind of comes out organically. Sometime in the course of Dorian watching the son of the fortune teller, which is Zachary, he kind of falls in love with him because he's he's younger, he's cute, he's an introvert. Dorian's like, fuck it, I'm gonna find him. And at the exact same time, Zachary's like, fuck it, I'm gonna find Dorian because I'm in love with him too. And everybody kind of falls to the wayside. And it becomes this weird, into the bottom layers of Under the Starless Sea, where they're fighting to get back to each other, and things are just manifesting around them. So at one point, Zachary's just sitting there at his mom's house, and he knows he's not at his mom's house, and him and Dorian are together, and they're happy, and it's laughy and pretty, and it's the holidays, and Zachary's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And Dorian's like, sweetheart, baby, we've been together for years. And it's all a trick of his mind. And then he wakes up, and that wasn't true. Dorian's fighting to get his way to Zachary, and he he gets off the boat from Eleanor, and he's like, thanks girl, blah blah, go find your man, I'm gonna go find mine. He just comes to this inn randomly, and this is where things get cloudy for me, because I rushed the end part of the book, and I feel like this been this whole thing's been cloudy, and I don't know if this fucking video is ever gonna end. He just stumbles upon this inn, and then he's just oh, remember that time I heard this story about fate and time? He just looks at the guy who lives this inn, or lives in this house. He's like, you got any fucking mice here? And they're like, yeah, we got a ton, come this way. And literally he walks back into a room, and this mouse, and he gets the heart of fate. So the beginning story where Fate and Time fell in love and a mouse stole Fate's heart to stop the Owl King from murdering everybody is basically like ends at that moment because he's like, yeah, here's this heart I just have had for fucking ever. And I still have no idea what happened. And he's just like, cool, I got this heart. Dip. I also have this sword. And I feel like Zachary gave him the sword at some point because they kind of met and like, but it was like a vision. They gave him the sword. And so like Dorian's walking around with a sword and this heart and he's like, I'm going to find Zachary. And like, but he's been hallucinating Zachary a lot and he knows if it's real or it's not real. So he's walking on this tundra, like this wild fucking tundra where he's like, I'm going to die because I'm hungry as fuck and I have a heart, but I can't eat that because that's gross. And I have a sword, but obviously that's metal. So unless I can stab a squirrel, I'm dead. Zachary Ezra Rollins is like fucking scaping, like learning everything there is to know about the Starless Sea. He finds that it's all honey. He has no idea what that means. And he just like also stumbles into a separate inn and it just is buzzing. And guess what? It is in there. It's a bunch of big ass fucking bees. Obviously the bees is an important part, right? And he's just like, okay, cool. Why are you all bees? And he's just like, we're bees. We love you, Zachary Ezra Rollins. And he's just like, I'm so confused what's happening. That's exactly what I'm saying because I have no idea. So the starlet, like there's like this entity above Fate and above Time and above Owl King and above everybody else. And it is, guess what? Da-da-da-da! It's the kitchen. And the kitchen is the bees. The kitchen is the fucking bees. Do we know what the bees are? No, it doesn't explain it, but the bees are there. The bees want to end the story. They want to help Zachary Ezra Rollins. They named goddamn Mirabelle. They're just the bees and they're happy to help and they're fucking happy. And that's it. And then so Zachary's like, okay, the kitchen is the bees. And then he just leaves. He leaves the thing. And there's not really an explanation. And he leaves and he's like, okay, I'm just going to walk this frozen tundra. Obviously, Dorian's walking the tundra. Zachary's walking the tundra. And they run into each other. And at this point, Dorian hasn't eaten in fucking ages. He's seen Zachary thousands of times, he feels like, in his heart. He is carrying the heart of Fate. And he's just like, no, first of all, you motherfucking like thing. This is a trick. I'm tired of your bullshit. I just can't handle it anymore. And he's like, I'm going to take the sword that I have that you gave me. And he jabs it through Zachary Ezra Rollins' heart and kills him. And when the blade goes through his chest, that's the only reason he knows he's real. Murders the motherfucker right through the heart. And then Dorian just like, Zachary is dead. And that's it. And then it's like Dorian just starts sobbing because he's just like, oh fuck, what did I do? Eleanor kind of comes back at some point and Dorian has like cradling Zachary's dead body on Eleanor's boat. And he's like, did you love him? And it's like, yes, I loved him. So he's sobbing. He's ugly crying. The Starless Sea is literally crumbling. The entire like little library thing where the innkeeper left, it's gone. The innkeeper is fled up ground. Mirabelle is up ground. Everybody who is like anybody really has like left the Starless Sea, and the only people who are still kind of around are Dorian and Eleanor, who will navigate wherever. And that's when another storyline gets introduced, and it's not up here because it's a secret. That storyline is Cat's storyline. So if you remember, Zachary originally had a friend who would like knit him Ravenclaw scarves and shit. And so like all of a sudden it starts getting like journal entries from Cat where it's like, I have been looking for this motherfucker, Zachary Ezra Rollins, for goddamn ages. Nobody cares. Nobody seems to think that he is missing and that he just left. She's like, I know better because he's my friend, which also was like very sad, like in conversation, because Zachary really didn't feel like he had many close friends, and Kat was like obsessed when he left. And so Kat was a video game designer, essentially a storyteller, which totally fits in with all of these people who are kind of like fighting this war underground. And she wrote this huge in-depth video game that sold, and she like was very successful and that she thought like was going to do really good. Through these journal entries that just start kind of manifesting another storyline, you kind of learn that Allegra while she was alive. And even though, like, Allegra, yes, is the villain, but again, you don't really see her even do very villainous stuff, starts following Kat around. And she was like, you know, hey, Kat, do you want to join my crazy order where we protect crazy things? Obviously, she never really got recruited because Allegra died, and there was no way to finish initiation, which you have to give something up on. But it starts to like get to this point where what do we have now? We have a crumbling Starless Sea where everything's dying. Zachary Ezra Rollins is dead. Dorian is crying, but he's like holding the heart of fate. And Kat, who has just kind of like been roped and learning all of these things, learning that, hey, by the way, the Starless Sea exists, that this Allegra bitch wants to have her gave her a key to walk through a doorway, but she doesn't know where it's located. So like it gets to this point where like it's almost like this point where like it's like everything is in inertia, right? It's like at the top of like kinetic energy when you throw a ball up in the air, and then you have that point at the top where it's just like hold. After that point, everything happens really fast. So all of a sudden, everything kind of makes sense because Dorian realized he has the heart of fate. Mirabelle is fate, right? But Mirabelle has left and is up over ground. Innkeeper has left and is up over ground. Allegra's dead. Sorry, I love you. We gotta go. The bees are just chilling there. They want it to end. The mouse, we don't care about the mouse. We didn't care for the mouse. So we have Zachary and we have Dorian. We have Simon and Eleanor. Eleanor is on a boat, and you think that she's gonna go pick up Simon. We don't really know. And I am still fucking mad. Let me just spoiler alert to the end. They never get a fucking reconciliation that we see, and I'm mad about it still. So we get to this point where it's just like, it's like build up, build up, build up. And we have Dorian here, and we have Zachary Ezra Rollins. But Dorian's got the heart of fate. And he's like, you know what? Fuck it. And he takes the heart of fate, and he shoves it in Zachary Ezra Rollins' chest. And you want to know what happens? Motherfucker comes back to life. Effectively ruining the cycle and completely closing the book on the story of fate and time. The reason why is because it resets the clock. It's no longer the Owl King that separated them. It's a completely different storyline. So, because the Innkeeper and Mirabelle are up over ground, they are no longer fate and time. Suddenly, Zachary Ezra Rollins is fate because he has the heart of fate. It doesn't really say what happens after that. It doesn't really like go gloss to Zachary and Dorian left and went underground. Simon and Eleanor went and were happy together. Allegra's still fucking dead because she's the villain that wasn't really a villain to me. It does, however, talk about the pirate and the mermaid for fucking 5 seconds. Now, if you have been paying attention, you know it's been an hour and I haven't said a thing about the pirate and the mermaid. They identify the mermaid as Rhyme. She is also driving a boat for no reason. And she's there. And there's no pirate around. So unless Rhyme is actually Eleanor the whole time, reincarnated, I'm very confused as to what her purpose was. It then literally goes to nothing but Kat. So Kat is basically the linear timeline. So she gets the job offer in Canada, and she's like, yes, I'll take it because give me fucking milk. Like, give me bills. That's all I want. She's like, also, I would love Zach to come back, but, you know, give me bills in the meantime. And she gets this note to just say, come check out this warehouse. I mean, don't do anything weird. Just come check it out. So she walks into this warehouse because she's obviously a bad judge of character, because that's not something I would do as a single woman at any time. Sees just paintings everywhere. And one of those paintings is of her with the key that Allegra the Dead gave her, opening the door that's right in fucking front of her. And she's just sitting there and she's like, okay, this isn't weird. This isn't weird at fucking all. And then it kind of flashes to outside where the innkeeper and Mirabelle, and I'm pretty sure Rhyme as well, are going through Kat's car, reading her journals, talking about how fate and time can be together, that Zachary and Dorian end up getting a happy ending, and that Kat is going to open the door. You never see her open the door. You never know if Zachary and Ezra are gonna get a happy, or Zachary and Dorian are gonna get a happy ending. You don't even know if like Mirabelle and the innkeeper get sick of each other because they've never really been around to like each other long enough to know if they're gonna get sick of each other. All you know is that the fucking story ends after that. There's so many things. I'm talking about this. I feel like none of this makes sense. Did any of this make sense? I have no idea. One, I don't understand the bees. Like, I understood a lot of things going through it. One of the things is the stumbling around in the middle, I attributed to the fact that Zachary ended up being Fate, right? So he would walk into rooms and find things or look at items because they were important to Fate in a previous life, and Fate is determined, right? It's predetermined. So he was reliving his past lives by doing those things. I could reconcile that. I could also reconcile that, like, you know, maybe Allegra wasn't the biggest things, but there's some things like I couldn't reconcile. Like, I have no idea why the Starless Sea was bees and honey. Like, I don't feel like that was explained, other than like the storytellers were considered keepers, right? And that's why they had keys. And what do you think of when you think of keeper? And is just a word association is a beekeeper, and that's the only thing I can get to. And if that's what Erin Morgenstern's doing, then I don't know why my books aren't more popular. I don't understand that. The biggest thing, and I think that the biggest problem I have with this entire book, and I Googled this bitch. I Googled the fuck out of it after this. I literally sat down and I said, what the fuck was the Owl King? At the very beginning, it said, with fate and time, the Owl King was like, this isn't happening. Y'all are dying. I have a fucking post-it note right here. And you want to know what that post-it note says? Who the fuck is the Owl King? There's no answer. There's nothing. Again, like I said, I really liked this book. I think my issue with it is that there were so many points of the story that I wished had been, like, this story, like, and you can see here in this diagram, right? It literally was just a taking of story after story after story and weaving them together, right? And I think that my assumption with that kind of storyline is at the end, I was going to get this beautiful, perfect, finalized knot where everything was together and I knew exactly what happened with everything. And that's not what happened with this story. This story left me going, what happened here and what happened here and who was this? And even though I very much enjoyed the story, Erin Morgenstern has a fantastic style and she's a very good writer. And honestly, like, this was a huge undertaking when it comes to book writing. I couldn't have written a book like this in 1,000 fucking years. And I say that as somebody who has actually written tangible books. I just felt like it could have been, I wanted to end this book and go, oh my God, you're right. You're right. Like, and just have it just like perfectly seamlessly woven up. And it wasn't that. And from interviews that I read when I researched this after the fact, I think that Erin Morgenstern's intention was for it to kind of be open-ended. I feel like I'm just really dissatisfied by that answer. Like, oh, it's supposed to be ambiguous. And the answer is, okay, but why? You spent so much time and care in developing these stories and getting them to connect. Why not take just as much time to kind of get them to wrap together and tighten up? However, if you haven't read The Starless Sea, I would recommend it just because I did enjoy it. I really did. I would not recommend reading the audiobook under any circumstances, or listening to the audiobook, under any circumstances. Please read it instead. You probably will like it. Just know that I recommend you taking notes, and you are going to be to a wild ride. Anyway, that was the very first episode of Imbibliophile. The longest book review I hope I ever fucking do. I don't know if you see me right now, but I am frayed. Like, whoo! Join me next time where I also do this. And I hopefully choose a book that is not anywhere near this complicated. And if I do, you have every right to tell me to go fuck myself. Cheers, bitches.